Supplies needed. You're going to need a thick 8x8 canvas, some smooth foam, some creative paper clay, paints, and some products. Here I'm starting to cut my smooth foam using my Thermocut from Proxxon. Great machine, works great for cutting your smooth foam. After I completed that, I actually added all the smooth foam to the top part of my canvas to make my canvas look like a home. Here I am tracing a window shape onto my canvas. Make sure that your window shape is within the boards of the canvas. Now I'm getting out my creative paper clay. And what I'm going to do now is actually cover the whole substructure with creative paper clay. I like to use, that's actually a PVC pipe, believe it or not, using to flatten roll out my paper clay. And I use a butter knife also to cut my paper clay. So I'm going to actually completely cover my whole substrate with the creative paper clay here. Water is your friend when you're working with creative paper clay. As the more you get your creative paper clay wet, the more that you can mold it and draw into it and add paper clay on top of paper clay. So always have water nearby. Here I'm taking a tool, and this you could really just use something as simple as a toothpick, and just scribing into the paper clay the look of tile shingles, basically, because that is a little roof that is like a gable off of the top of my house. So I'm just adding these shapes. And you do want to do this while the paper clay is still wet. These little details will make a huge difference in your project at the end. I'm continuing to add paper clay over my whole project to completely cover this whole substrate with paper clay. I am showing you a little bit here. I'm not going to show you the whole thing, me doing it, because that'd be very boring. But I wanted to show you how I'm using the water and I'm taking my fingers, you see, and smoothing out that paper clay. It really does make a difference to get yourself a nice, clean spot between each of your paper clays. It really does make a huge difference. And a simple little butter knife works great to cut your paper clay. And again, using my fingers to smooth it all out and make it become one piece of paper clay, even though I'm putting it on in small sheets. You really get the details in there if you just keep molding it and pulling it and getting it all nice. Again, using my PVC pipe to to roll out my paper clay. Again, my water bottle filled with water just to keep it wet and keep smoothing all those joints out and making them look as one. So it looks like I actually put one huge piece of paper clay on my canvas here when I just used little pieces at a time and just kept building on and building on. Here I'm taking that butter knife again, and I'm just adding lines into my paper clay to make it look like bricks. Again, doing this while my paper clay is still wet. These little details really come out at the end that just is amazing how well this looked when I was completely done with it. So just add your details in while your paper clay is still wet. And that's why I'm doing the top here, even though I haven't completely done all the paper clay. I wanted to make sure that it was still wet while I got those bricks into that top section. Now here I'm taking another piece of smooth foam and I'm making a door and a gable right over the top of my door. So I actually I'm adding that after I've done the paper clay, and now I'm adding paper clay over top of the door. So this gave me really cool dimension to make it look like that door was actually three-dimensional instead of flat on the house. Again, lots of water. Water's my friend when I use paper clay. I made that little gable out of smooth foam again, and I am covering that again with paper clay and adding it to the house, making sure it's well adhered to my house with paper clay. Now I'm rolling out some thin pieces of paper clay to add some details to those windows. Remember, that's canvas right there underneath those windows, so I will eventually be cutting that canvas away, leaving just the as an open window there, which will be really cool because I will be adding a light behind this canvas, and the light will be able to shine through those windows at a later date. Tiny little doorknob for my door. Again, all those little details really help. Continuing my bricks, because I need to have bricks around the whole house. Continuing to add a little more detail around those windows. Again, adding water, because remember, paper clay will stick to paper clay as long as it's wet. So making sure my paper clay is always staying wet during my process here really does make a huge difference. Finishing my bricks. I let my paper clay house dry for approximately 2 days because it was quite moist here. We were having rain. So I'm grabbing some DecoArt Paynes Grey and some white paint, and I'm mixing those two together because I wanted a really light gray on my house. And I always just buy one color and just make whatever color I need. So the Paynes Grey and the white giving me a really soft gray that I will completely paint the whole house minus the roofs with the Paynes Grey. Now here I'm just grabbing the plain Paynes Grey, and I'm just going to go directly around my windows to give that a little more dimension. And you can kind of see in this one, I started cutting the canvas behind the windows also. And I will completely cut that canvas away before I'm finished. So just doing the Paynes Grey in the windows. I'm going to also do that door with the Paynes Grey. Now I'm grabbing another color of DecoArt, and I'm doing the windows, or excuse me, the roofs of both of my tops. They're the little gables I have made. And then I will also do the gable above the door. And I actually end up putting the same color over top of the Paynes Grey door that I made originally, which kind of gave it a really cool color. I have to admit, those two colors together was kind of interesting. Might have to do that again in the future. Don't you love happy accidents? Now I'm grabbing DecoArt's Antiquing Cream. I have to admit, this is one of my favorite paints. And what's awesome about this, and because I put all those lines in that acted as bricks, this allows that antiquing cream to go down into those lines in my bricks to give it a really cool detail. And as you see, it also kind of darkened it up and made it look more hauntish, more old, and you know, as a haunted house would, it wouldn't be clean. And I'm using a baby wipe there to remove the antiquing cream from DecoArt. And I'm getting really, I got a really cool crack down there at the bottom that I'm working on right now. Normally I would fix cracks in my paper clay, but my house, I definitely didn't want to fix that crack. I love the way it looked. Again, and I couldn't have asked for a better crack if I tried. So I'm really getting it deep into those cracks and crevices in the paper clay to give it all this really cool detail. And darkening up in areas that it would be, if you think about where your house would be a little darker, is where I worked the hardest to get the antiquing cream in there to give it really age. And I actually did this also on the roof and the doors, because all of that would be dirty, which the antiquing cream gave me that look really nicely. See how cool it looks? Remember to do your sides, because this is a three-dimensional object that will be hanging on my wall, so I need to make sure I got all my sides so people don't see where I missed. Again, just getting into those cracks that were a little deeper that I really wanted that antiquing cream to get in there and do its stuff. Now I grabbed my Gina Design Lasercut Spooky Shapes and 3 colors of white, orange, and black. I started off painting my 2 ghosts with white, of course, making sure you do your edges of your chipboard, because you will see all those edges. So make sure you get it all painted all the way around. So I have 2 little ghosts here that I painted. Sorry, I'm a little out of camera there. I get working and forget about the camera sometimes. Now I'm grabbing a little pumpkin that I'll be putting on the house and just doing that in orange. Now the last ones I'm going to be doing all in black, and these are 3 bats a cat, and a witch that I will be adding to my house when it's all dry. All these little details that come in handy later on. Okay, I'm going to let those dry. And now we get to start adding them to the house. I'm just using plain old Elmer's glue here, but really you could use whatever glue, you know, makes you happy. Adding the pumpkin down by the door, and I'm having those two ghosts come out of that one window there. My witch is going to be over the other window, and that's just a metal piece that I just added to add a little dimension. And I'm grabbing my bats now and gluing them to the top part of the house. Now up there on that last gable, I found this awesome ribbon, believe it or not, that kind of looked like the shape of a fence that you always see in the top of those haunted houses. So I'm adding that again with Elmer's glue and letting that dry. Now I'm going to be hanging this on a wall, and behind the canvas I actually added a light, which you can kind of see there. And I want to thank you for joining, and I